Picture this, you're a star athlete, you've been recognized as one of the world's most influential and marketable sports figures. You drove a 170% league-wide viewership increase in your rookie season, and you account for over a quarter of your league's economic activity, and you make $50,000 less than the car wash manager at Buc-ee's. Listen, this is no shade at Buc-ee's. I love a car wash and brisket sandwich as much as the next guy, but when you're single-handedly transforming a professional sports league, that kind of salary doesn't make much sense. And this is the reality for Caitlin Clark this year. She'll take home around $78,000 with the Indiana Fever. Yes, I know she has endorsements, she's not hurting for cash, but her agent's comments about her salary have sparked a debate about her true value to the WNBA and how the league will never ever be able to pay her what she's worth. Now this has everyone debating and attempting to quantify Caitlin's value, and I'll get to that in this video because, well, I did the math and it's insane, but here's the bigger question based on how Caitlin has been treated. Even if the WNBA could pay Caitlin her, would they, with all the effort from the media and ex-players to diminish Caitlin's impact, and with complaints from fans about how sponsors like Nike, players, and even team owners go out of their way to make the league's success about more then just one player? You gotta wonder if Caitlin, the catalyst for the rise in the WNBA's popularity and the player who is undoubtedly, and with very little thanks I might add, creating a better financial situation for every WNBA player, will ever be appropriately recognized financially. I'm gonna dig into it, and I think after watching this you're going to have a greater appreciation for not just what Caitlin is accomplishing, but for her long game and ability to see the entire playing field, because based on the math, well, you'll see the numbers are insane. But first, tell me in the comments how much Caitlin should be paid. It'll be interesting to see what everyone thinks, and if I'm close or off. Okay, so Caitlin Clark's agent Erin Kane got everyone talking about how women are paid in sports, particularly her client. In a recent interview, she said, will Caitlin Clark ever be paid by the WNBA what she's really worth to that league? I don't think that's possible. Now on the surface, that would be the last thing I'd want my agent to say. I mean, Caitlin's only heading into her second season, and already her agent's saying she will never be compensated fairly. But wait, there's more. She went on to say that Caitlin should be recognized for what she's done for the league from an economic perspective, and that all players should be paid more. Now, she kind of has to say that last part about increasing pay for all players because she represents other WNBA players, but it also benefits Caitlin for that to happen. I'll explain why in a bit, but I think we can all agree that Caitlin's current pay situation is, well, ridiculous. Clark is set to make around $78,000 this season. You don't have to be a sports agent or math whiz to know there's absolutely no way that's in the ballpark of what she's worth. But that begs the question, what is Caitlin Clark really worth? To understand this, let's take a step back. So while league brass and ex-players who want credit for the league's recent success won't admit it, the WNBA was floundering before Caitlin Clark burst onto the scene. That's my polite way of saying it was hemorrhaging money like crazy. Since 1996, they've been losing an average of more than $10 million every year. That's nearly 3 decades of bleeding cash. The only reason the league survived was because it was heavily subsidized by the NBA, which owns 60% of it, even more when you look at individual owner contributions. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver even had to admit that the WNBA hasn't provided any returns for NBA owners. Many investors are wondering if they'll ever see a return. I mean, it's kind of like having a child who goes to college for 7 years. Like, stop messing around and make some money. Anyway, the league was desperate for a game changer, someone who could turn heads, fill seats, and make people sit up and take notice. They needed a star so bright she could outshine all the doubters and naysayers who claimed the WNBA would never stand on its own 2 feet. And then everything changed. Enter Caitlin Clark, the human highlight reel. She wasn't just good, she was rewriting the record books and making jaws drop with every game. Suddenly people who had never given women's basketball a second glance were tuning in just to see what Clark would do next. Her rookie season was nothing short of revolutionary. She didn't just earn Rookie of the Year honors, she transformed the entire league. Picture this, the Indiana Fever, once the WNBA's cellar dwellers, suddenly found themselves in the playoffs. It's a complete 180 rags to riches story. Speaking of rags to riches, that's just the beginning of Caitlin's impact. Her arrival sent viewership numbers through the roof. We're talking about a mind-blowing 170% increase. The 2024 season became the most watched in WNBA history, with Clark's Fever contributing 45% of the league's broadcast value. And let's talk merchandise. Clark's impact on sales is off the charts. League-wide merchandise sales shot up by 450% during the 2024 season. That's not a typo. 450%. It's like everything Clark touched turned to gold, from boosting ticket sales to driving merchandise revenue. Her impact is felt in every aspect of the WNBA's business. It's like she walked in and flipped a switch, turning the league from something you'd watch in passing on ESPN 8 the Ocho into a mainstream success. I hate to use this quote because it's by Russian dictator Vladimir Lenin, but it makes perfect sense. There are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. Caitlin did in 1 year what thousands of players couldn't in decades: make the WNBA mainstream and marketable. So you'd think the WNBA would be backing up the Brinks truck, right? You'd assume they'd be falling over themselves to compensate the player who's single-handedly transforming their league. Well, not so fast. The Caitlin Clark phenomenon, how do you describe it? She's clearly an unbelievable player, came in with an unbelievable following, has brought a lot of new fans to the league. If you look at our historic season around our attendance, our viewership, the WNBA's current salary structure is like a straitjacket, limiting potential and squeezing players' earnings. The highest paid players in the league are pulling in around $250,000, but if you're a rookie, your max is much, much lower. The Fever signed Caitlin to a rookie max contract, which paid her $76,535 in 2024. Now, let's put this in perspective. The average NBA salary is nearly $12 million, with rookie contracts in the multi-million-dollar range. Yes, we all know the NBA generates a lot more revenue, but there's another issue hampering the WNBA's ability to revenue sharing. The WNBA's revenue has doubled since 2019, growing from $102 to $200 million. You'd think that would mean bigger paychecks, right? Wrong. Thanks to the league's current revenue-sharing model, players are only getting 9.3% of total league revenue. For comparison, players in the NBA, NFL, and NHL get between 48% and 51% of revenue. It's like the WNBA is handing out crumbs while other leagues are serving up the whole bakery. Well, that's about to change. The W thinks that they don't have to pay us more in order for us to be here. The WNBA is gearing up for a new media rights deal in 2026, and it's a game changer. Some tense negotiations and possibly even a work stoppage if things don't improve by the end of the 2025 season, experts are weighing in too. Andrew Zimbalist, a sports economist, suggests that WNBA players should be aiming for a 50% split of league revenues. That's a significant jump from where they are now, but given the league's growth and newfound popularity, it's not unreasonable. So yeah, WNBA players are going to get a significant pay bump. But even with these changes, will Caitlin get paid what she's truly worth to the league? This is where the numbers get ridiculous, and everyone in the WNBA should have a huge appreciation for what Caitlin is doing. So she stepped into the league and viewership increased 170%. That is a 27x increase, so nearly triple. And 45% of broadcast value was generated by Fever games. The Fever weren't must-see TV before Caitlin, so you can't argue this is normal or expected. That's one player driving nearly half of the league's value. And then you have this: it's been estimated that she was responsible for nearly 27% of the WNBA's economy in 2024, and then there's the new media rights deal, which is more than 3x more valuable than their current arrangement. And even if some don't want to give Caitlin all the credit, because people love to do that, her economic impact and influence on broadcast value clearly played a huge role in what the WNBA was able to negotiate. So what is Caitlin worth? Here's a starting point. The league-wide salary cap, all teams added together, is $19.6 million. At the bare minimum, Caitlin is worth around 27% of that, because she accounted for around 27% of revenue. That would put her at $5.2 million in yearly salary. But if we're being real, considering she's driving half the league's broadcast value, which likely helped them negotiate $140 million more per year in media rights, you could argue she's worth $10 million or much more under the current CBA. To put that in perspective, the Fever not only hold the attendance record at both home and away games this year, but the merchandise sales are through the roof, with jersey sales seeing a 200% increase, and the top seller is number 22. There are 140-ish other players in the league, even at a $5.2 million per year valuation, which again, I think is super conservative. She would be paid over 50 times more than the average WNBA player under the current cap. Again, she's likely worth much, much more. And this right here is why Caitlin will never be paid what she's worth by the WNBA. Yes, there will always be a cap, but that's not the problem. The real issue is optics. You see, when you have one player that is so much more popular than the rest, and everyone knows that, you still can't go all in and pay them 50 to 100 times more than everyone else. Here's why. By doing that, you're telling the world that your league is essentially a one-trick pony, that only one player matters, and I know many of you are screaming, but Caitlyn is the only player people care about. Sure, I get it, I just went through the numbers, her impact is undeniable. But as much as some people won't like hearing this, the reality is that a sports league is an ecosystem. While Caitlyn is clearly the star you can't present to the world, a one-star league, you can't have one player making all the money while the rest of the players make peanuts. You need balanced and fair pay within the confines of what the league can afford to attract and retain talent. That last part is critical. Caitlyn Clark is irrelevant if she's not competing against the best players in the world on the biggest stage. Does anyone care that Kennedy Carter is dropping 50 points in the China League? No, because the competition sucks. Compared to the WNBA, there must be a challenge. And you only get that challenge by attracting top talent, and the WNBA can't retain top talent unless they pay them fairly relative to what teams can afford. And then there's this. From an investment standpoint, there's risk when you put all your eggs in one basket. For example, while I 100% believe it's in the league's best interest to showcase Caitlyn everywhere they have to showcase other players within the spotlight that Caitlyn has created. They have to get some of the shine. Here's Clark catch fire and connect. Growing a league by focusing only on one player is risky business. Think of it this way, what happens if Caitlyn Clark gets injured for a season, and the WNBA focused all their marketing on her? They have to do their best now to ensure enough of the Caitlyn Clark pixie dust falls onto other players. It's a delicate balance. At times it seems unfair, but there's no choice. You see it with Nike, State Farm, and other Caitlyn Clark sponsors. Caitlyn cannot be their entire marketing plan. Sure, Nike has made some questionable moves that leave Caitlyn Clark fans scratching their heads, but their brand is much larger than one player, and really, because big brands tend to think alike, this is also how Caitlyn is looking at the world from a compensation standpoint. She, unlike many other WNBA players, cannot rely on the WNBA to pay her what she's worth. She needs to diversify. That means a portfolio of massive sponsorship deals, or perhaps becoming a sports franchise owner down the road. This is where her money will be made. Basically, whatever she makes in the W will always be nominal by comparison, but the success and health of the WNBA, and of course her performance in it, are essential to her ability to make money off the court. For that reason, the WNBA cannot and will not pay her what she's worth. And Caitlyn will never demand it beyond just getting the max contract allowed under the cap. As I said, she sees the entire playing field. She knows, because she is the one saving a league that has struggled for nearly 3 decades to survive on its own. She's not stepping into a situation where the league can pay her what she's worth, but because she stands out from her peers much more than LeBron, Steph, Luka, or Nikola, who were playing in a league that was popular before their arrival. She has the separation that makes her one of the most bankable athletes in the world. It's a double-edged sword of sorts, but financially it's going to work out for Caitlyn very well as long as she continues to lift the WNBA, even if they never pay her what she's worth. If you're still here, drop a basketball emoji in the comments to let me know. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Thanks for watching, and subscribe my channel.